Right then, Mr. H here, and I just want to take this quick opportunity to welcome new people to the channel who would obviously be searching for this interview, but secondly, just to quickly interject and say to my normal subscribers, there won't be a vlog today because what I have for you all is an interview with Coralie Fargeat and Matilda Lutz of the fantastic film Revenge. This is an awesome film. It's dropping in the UK on the 11th of May. And I was kindly invited along to a press junket where I got to talk to them and ask them a few questions. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you do, give it a big thumbs up. If you're new, hit the subscribe button and over to the interview.
Pleasure to meet you both. Personally, for me, this film is hugely refreshing. Blew me away. I've seen it twice now with screenings and such. For me, it's a film which is so unique when we're surrounded by films which are so samely and very paint by numbers. So I guess my first question is really, what's the inspiration behind that, and was that your aim to make it quite as unique as possible?
Thank you very much. Yes, the idea at the beginning was to make a real genre film, but also to find a way to make it very unique in the way I was going to direct it and in the way I was going to create all the feeling and all the atmosphere. Because I think for genre film, it's a lot about that. The story can be quite simple, quite linear, but it's the way you're gonna make the audience feel and bring some kind of very strong emotions with all the visuals and the sound and the way you are playing with them that I was very attracted to. And it's the case in the movies of those genres I really loved. So the idea came from, at the very beginning, from the idea of the character of this girl who would be seen at the beginning as a very weak and empty character because she presents herself in a certain way, and I think it's for this same reason that she's gonna attract on her a very toxic behavior, and she's gonna give them the idea that she can be, you know, they can get rid of her as they want and that nobody's gonna care. And I like the idea to make a real rebirth in a kind of super heroine who wouldn't fear anything and who wouldn't need the help of anyone, you know, to gain a new strength. And yeah, so that was the very beginning of the idea of the project.
What was it like to play that character that goes from such extremes throughout the movie?
It was the first thing that fascinated me of the character, to like play such different parts. And I think like even in the casting process we started already building the character, and then rehearsals and fittings I think helped to like discover more about the character, and we spent a lot of time on the costumes and figuring out like what was like really iconic and what made her like very unique. And then on set we like started creating the character together, and there were some times I remember, because we didn't have a lot of time to prep, and in 2 days I was basically in Paris, started fittings and rehearsals.
I heard about that. The former lead dropped out quite close to production. You didn't have much prep time.
Yeah, no, we basically, like I got a call on Friday and Sunday I was on a plane to go to Paris.
Wow.
A week after.
We were shooting, like 5 days later.
Wow.
And so like I remember just trying to think about two things that were very like fast and effective to play two different characters like that. And I thought of Marilyn Monroe for the first part because I read a biography about her, and I read that something really stuck with me, which was that even when she was alone, she was always like pretending like there was someone watching her, especially men, so that she would feel at her best even when she was alone, and that was her way to feel loved, basically. And I thought that of Jen, that she was always like so seductive and sensual and beautiful, and you know, playing with these like, you know, sides of her. And then the second part was more about basically building like an animal So like working on like animal like work and pretending to like be a panther looking for a prey and trying to like use all the sensorial I could. So like what she would feel and hear and smell, and yeah, so that's how I worked on the two sides of Jen.
With respect to the kind of two sides to Jen, there's a very visual transformation. What was the inspiration for that? Because obviously you worked on that together. So what was the inspiration behind? And it's very drastic. There's color changes, everything, and obviously the costume changes as well. What were you trying to invoke from the audience in terms of such a visual change?
Yeah, exactly. For me, the transformation would work if it was going to be very to the extreme. So I really wanted to go, you know, full first Lolita, blondish, like very, very, you know, a kind of cliche character, kind of Marilyn Monroe, Brigitte Bardot, blonde, pink, you know, all the very powerful, symbolic, you know, color of girl and Lolita and seduction, and to totally reverse it in the second part where she becomes more and more covered with dust, with wounds, her hair turned brunette, and her body, which is the same, kind of transformed in the way she inhabits it. Also, she becomes more grounded, more powerful, more harsh also in a way. And I knew that for those two sides of the character, they would work together if they were very, very at the extreme one another. I think it's like the yin and the yang, you know, and all the symbol that work together if they are very, very at the
extremes.
Exactly, at the opposite. So we worked a lot on that, like in the costumes and with the hair and with all the evolution of the wounds as well, figuring out what she was going to have when, and all this took really shape also on set, like adding stuff, you know, when you are in camera, you see what you need more or what you need less, but usually we need more.
Well, speaking of more, there's so much blood in this film. It would be a shame, obviously, not to talk about it. It's essentially kind of a character in and unto itself. The use of blood is so extreme. What was it you were looking to get from the audience with such an extreme use of blood?
Yeah, it was a very important part of the story and of the spirit, I would say, of the movie, and in a way to make it unique. And I questioned myself during the writing at first on how I wanted to deal with violence and how I wanted to stage it and what I wanted to do with it. And I knew very early in the process that I didn't want to go into horror where the violence and the wounds are made to be as realistic as possible and to hurt as much as possible and to be very disgusting. That was not what I wanted to create. I wanted to create something that would be more phantasmagoric and more baroque in a way, and would also put a filter with reality by being so excessive, you know, that it creates some kind of poetry for me. And that's why I admire in filmmakers, the South Korean filmmakers, for instance, in movies like Old Boy or I See the Devil, make it, you know, they go to the extreme and you're always on the edge of being ridiculous, and you have to, you know, to accept this part of grotesque, you know, that creates something that is so crazy that it's creating a new, you know, a new path with blood and violence. And it's the same way for the character. I knew I needed a lot, and I knew I needed to go very far in the scenes, you know, in the obsessions of the characters with that blood and with that violence to reach the point where something happens.
Was that something which attracted you to the project on a whole? Obviously, you would have known such an extreme use of blood, but in a unique way. I'm not saying blood attracts you to a project, but in terms of it being quite as unique as it was.
I think I didn't expect it to be that bloody, and I think no one expected the film to be that bloody. I remember the special effects team freaking out because they couldn't find blood, they couldn't get blood from Paris, and they were running out. So
There's
they were
a
like,
scene, it literally runs out in a scene when you're on the tree. There's a cut shot where there was some in obviously coming from your mouth, and it cuts. I read somewhere that
and
actually does.
There's no blood.
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, me too.
But I guess you were very. No, but it's true though. Like we didn't know like that was gonna be you know, so bloody, especially the hallway scene. We went from shooting scenes in the villa where it was completely clean, everyone was like happy and pretty and clean, to basically like being covered in blood. And I remember like Coralie basically giving directions to like the set designer, like, you know, props to like put blood on the walls, and everyone was like, more? And then she would do it herself. She would get the bucket and she would start, like, she looked more like a painter than a director. And she was just like putting blood on the walls, and it was pretty fun though.
I think my kind of last question, and something which I really enjoyed through the film, which to me made it so unique, was the use of sound, but also contrasting colours. So as you progress as a character and you evolve and you change, there's a great scene, and there's two scenes which are very similar in their use of colour anyway, where your earring is very brightly lit across quite a dark background. And then there's a similar scene where Richard is driving the motorbike and it's lit from the bottom upwards, and again, very dark. What was the inspiration behind such a, well, it is unique in, you know, modern cinema now. What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, I knew from the start that the visual and the colors and the way I would put things in a way out of reality would be as well the DNA of the film, like being able to create those kind of unreal moments. For the motorbike, for instance, he drives in, you know, it's kind of a trance, like being in his mind with this kind of a Daft Punk, you know, look with his helmet and the way it's lit. And I think for me, what I love in cinema, it's when very special and simple images can bring so strong emotions and stay with you. And I think the same for the earring. It's kind of a very little symbol of her character at the beginning, the pink, the star, you know, wanting to be a star, that stays with her and, you know, brings something very powerful on screen with the contrast with her new self. And I love a lot playing with all those symbols and contrast, and I think that's what brings, yeah, some kind of emotions only cinema can create.
Yeah, I personally love the film, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
Thanks.